Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is March 4th, Tuesday night, 5:30, and I am your host, Rich Teslo, and this is the Two Guys Tech HomeLab Hour. This show, guys, I have one of my favorite guests, might be my actual favorite guest. We'll get to him in a second here. Just some housekeeping, though. This is all about talking about HomeLab, self-hosting, talking about tech questions if you have, so throw them in the chat. We'll get them on the screen as we get through it. And have a good time talking and doing nerd stuff. So with that out of the way, how do I introduce my guest? I think I'll introduce him by saying that the reason why you're watching this show right now, watching me, so if you like it, you know, it's all my doing, but if you don't like it, it's his fault, was after a conversation I had with him about doing a regular live show, interacting with you guys and talking about these passions. And took me about a year, I think, to get to this point, but I owe a lot to him. So without further ado, the man that needs no introduction, Mr. Tom Lawrence. Oh, and he's in the middle of drink. Sorry, Tom.
Yeah, right in the middle of drink.
So, welcome, sir. Thank you so much for joining me.
Absolutely. I see people. We got people from Florida, Portugal, coming all over the place.
I love it. International audience. That's
the beauty of YouTube. Fun.
Yeah. So how have you been?
Fantastic. It's been a good day.
Yeah. My day's been super just crazy busy, but you know, it's been, I think you and I got together tail end of December, probably right after Christmas time, and we made that video I released about our predictions. Still too early to see if our predictions came true or not. Like we'll hold judgment until the end there. But I know that you have been up to a ton of stuff. A ton of stuff. And I actually have questions for you, if you don't mind being.
Go ahead.
I really want to know how the decision to move from pfSense to Unify came about. I'm genuinely, because I mean, I gotta know.
So inside information, and I think I might have talked about it before, but I have been known to call out Unify on their BS and just the fact that I just didn't, they were very going in the wrong direction with the firewall. They had so many dumb things they did over the years. They took like the long road instead of the right road. Because for a little while, I remember when they first came out with OpenVPN, you had to join it to a cloud instance. It uploaded the VPN file from the host and you downloaded the VPN file from the website. I'm like, I couldn't come up with a dumber way to do this. Like, and I was very vocal about why I couldn't recommend their firewalls. Well, they just took it as I was just dunking on them type thing. And it actually was when I started engaging, what do we have to do to change your mind? And I said, oh, you actually want to know? So I made a long list and I outlined it like a whole project plan. And they go, oh, you're actually serious. You want to help us? I said, yeah, I don't do it because of that. So I actually engaged with them a little bit and had some good discussion with them. And this goes back over a year now. And they've also chose to engage not just me, but other people in the community. So I've actually ended up having a lot of conversations and actually got to see things beforehand. So I said, if you guys do all these things in the list, I'd use it. And so and I'm a man of my word. They did. They still have a few more things come out. I've actually, because I'm on their alpha program now for seeing things, I've helped them kind of brainstorm ideas through deployments. So I went ahead and just wanted to switch my own network to it. We got so many pfSenses we're supporting for customers. Matter of fact, we have 3 more pfSenses at my lab in Toledo. So they're all over the place. I even have ones in my lab here, but even what runs our company is still a lot of pfSense on the public facing side, even our data center. So it's not like it's much banning pfSense, but I want to see how viable is it to use this. And trial by fire was better because once I really did that, and with their version 9, I was able to find some really unique edge cases. And those edge cases they're unique. They're not something that the average, even complicated HomeLabber might run into, but nonetheless, I really put it through the tests and work with their engineers. And some of the updates will be in 9.1 that are fixing problems that I've run into.
That's
awesome.
It's
been actually good. I mean, the engagement with them has been top notch. especially you don't get this out of many companies, especially the corporate ones.
Right.
I found a really esoteric, hard to reproduce, but reproducible under certain conditions, which this is why it's always hard the way they're going to document the fix, because it's documented in the 9.1. It's like, under certain conditions, this rule it doubles a rule is what it does. So it blocks something it shouldn't block. So it doesn't cause a security problem. It kind of the opposite. It blocks too much. So, but it's in fun. It took them 24 hours to get that fixed. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't fixed in the production. It's like this fix will now be in the 9.1, blah, blah, blah. But they're very active. I feel like they're on a speed run for features, especially the new features coming out in 9.1, which just hit early access, is kind of a direct result for walking them through trouble flows of how I look at things. And they've done, like I said, it's not just me, so I'm not trying to take all the credit for this, but the engineers have worked really tirelessly at it. And I appreciate that about that. And so when you have that good interaction, and I have no problems at that time going, well, I'll switch to it. And here I am.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I had mentioned in a previous stream, I have a buddy who's a technical guy, but he's not an IT person, right? It's just not his field of expertise. And he was planning on redoing his network, and he said, well, what should I do? And I'm like, well, how about we try Unify? Well, he's already familiar with Unify access points, but had a self-hosted controller, but let's actually go the whole route. Let's get rid of your Asus. And so we planned it all out, just bought a UDM SE, and he bought all the stuff. And then my expectation was that I was going to come by on a Saturday afternoon. We were going to drink some beers, and we were just going to put it all together and get it working and orient the guy into how it worked. And I got a call at like 6:00 that night, and he's like, done. And I'm like, wait, huh? That's not how it used to be. Like, there was those idiosyncrasies or esotericisms of the way Unify did things. They've clearly put a whole lot of effort into their user experience. And for somebody who's never seen a UDM, who's never done anything with their firewalls, and he went through with the new firewall rules that they just made, and it was nothing. I'm like, okay, this really has finally gotten to that point where you can recommend them to somebody, and if they've got the intelligence and the patience, they're going to figure it out pretty easily. And I thought that was a big deal.
One of the things that to their credit, what their goal is, or overarching, is to make IT easier, and I get that. And that was the design. It's just they went about the wrong way in the earlier days of their firewall. They wanted to make it so easy that we'll connect you to a cloud to get your own VPN set up. I'm like, no, that's not easier. Like it creates kind of an interdependency on things. So I like that they've kept the ethos of we want to make it easy, but we can still give you control. We can make it all managed inside the firewall and things like that. That's where I think they've done just a really nice job of it. Like the HA video, hands down, it's almost boring how easy HA is set up on there. And if you've done Cisco, if you've done even pfSense, I've got videos on it. There's a lot of steps involved, and that's not, you know what I mean? I think when I get done with this MC lag video for their enterprise aggregation system, once again, the few steps it takes to get up this multi-chassis link aggregation setup compared to the way you do it for Cisco, I'll race a really good, I type Cisco commands at 200 words per minute person who can set it up faster, because you're a few clicks away from setting up the link aggregation versus, hold on, let me set this port option this and option this. And all right, let's lag these together, even from the command line, which I know people get really good at. They can template it and you can Ansible and build it out, but it's still nice to say, cool, someone with less networking knowledge, just a general overview, can go click, click, select ports, apply. Magic.
I don't think there's kind of this concept that I butt my head up against with a lot of people, and that is the belief that for it to be actually good, it has to be hard.
Yeah.
And I think that that's kind of bullshit, right? I mean, sure, there's something to be said about complexity and features that require that level of complexity. I mean, we can get a CCIE in here, and he would probably put us in our place. But yeah, I mean, their competition in that market would be what, like Cisco Meraki kind of stuff, right? And, in my opinion, as someone who personally hates Meraki, I think that they're exceeding on so many levels, and I'm not throwing any shade towards you for moving to Unify. I'm actually just kind of a little jealous. I'm like, but I'm on BFSet still.
Yeah.
So
I like both. I think there's a lot of people that get the sunken cost problem of I went through high levels of training to get here. I know how to work this command line. This puts me at this elite level, and this person just walked in and clicked 3 buttons and made it happen. And I think I kind of get that, like, you're used to doing it, but the reality is, I always go back because there's people complaining. I did a review on Rust Desk, like, oh my God, it's written in Rust. Rust is awful. Only idiots would write in Rust. I mean, the dumb comments I got because it's written in Rust was weird. But I'm like, oh, I said, and they're like, well, you should only be writing things in C because it's smaller. I'm like, whoa, buddy. You better be writing assembly if you want to talk about it. So I think the assembly people should be picking on you a little bit here. The
right.
reason we have, and I get why we have these larger frameworks, as much as I may not like how some things are indeed bloated. Not that Rust is a framework, but the other coding languages do introduce some heaviness to them. They're not going to compile the same size small binaries. I get that, but it makes it easier for people. And matter of fact, a memory safe language like Rust is like, cool. You don't have to have as much knowledge on memory management. You can be like, I just want to focus on the program and the logic of building this, not have to also understand how to respect all the boundaries and make sure that I'm not going to have any type of buffer overruns or other problems that may be created in C by having to manage your own memory. And of course, that's why C was invented, is because great if you can do assembly, but that turns out to be a small percentage of us.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Very, very interesting lot that can sit there and do the assembly coding.
Yeah.
So do you see in the future Unify, like where do you see them with their products and their drive in the market? Where do you kind of see them going? Do you think that they're going to end up uh, trying to eat other people's lunch? Like where is this? What do
I
you
think
see?
their sights are pretty heavily set right now on Fortinet and
Oh,
Meraki.
easy.
That would probably be the two biggest, because they're really, I've been to a couple of their what they call Unify World conferences where they do the whole meetup. They're building community. They've got a whole list of dates for 2025. They're doing them, so they're doing the right thing and building community conferences. They're building relationships in the MSP space for saying, hey, this is very manageable for an IT company to sell to their clients. And they know that's the target market to get into Fortinet or Meraki. The difference is, and I think this is where people do really struggle, is their slow adoption for some of the MSP market comes to the fact that MSPs are used to making 25% commission on selling hardware and 40% commission on selling licenses. They're like, well, how do I sell it now? There's not a recurring license fee to renew. I'm like, you charge for managed network. You can still
Right.
charge because you're still servicing network. You're still making sure things are working for the client. You're still providing a value. Matter of fact, in some ways, you can make more money with Unify because you don't have to kick upstream to the license fee. So I think that they're going to keep growing into that market as more MSPs and more IT people kind of see the value in it. We've done a lot of school districts, and it's kind of cool following up with a school district we did almost 2 years ago now. And they're just like, the bid was so low by putting Unify in compared to Cisco. They thought we were bidding it wrong at first. It was like
Oh, really?
they're like, you're not playing the same game, because it was a $300,000 bid. And the Cisco stuff was all $500,000 plus. So they're like, this can't be the same bid. You're not like 10% or 20% lower. And I'm like, well, we put margin on it. And but it's just the fact that if you do the comparisons, and like the U7 Enterprise is roughly 1/3 of the MSRP of the equivalent Meraki, and that's not
Oh, yeah.
including licensing.
Right.
Now, granted, because of your partner programs, you only pay about, I think you're depending on what level you are, Meraki, you make about 33%. So you could cut your margins down, and maybe it's only that much. But even if you cut your margins down, Meraki's still almost double the price.
Right.
So it makes a compelling offer, and not having the subscription fees, because like when I talked to the guy from school, talked about a month ago, he's like, everything's going great. And he's like, it's kind of just nice. I'm not worried about renewals. He goes,
Yeah.
he's updated all the firmware. He's, updated the controller. They're managing and self-hosting it internally because they have a small data center. Because this was an entire school district that we did a rip and replace for. We didn't have to do the cabling. It was just replacing all their old Meraki stuff. And we did a few of those, and it's kind of like, this ain't bad.
Yeah. No, there's, I'm trying to hold myself back because I will complain about Meraki for so many things. I still think that Meraki does a really good job with their Wi-Fi products. I think that their switching is terrible. I think that their layer 3 management and like actual layer 3 functionality in their switches is terrible. I don't think they should be in that business. And I think that if you can self-host and get basically the same features and not have to pay that continuous yearly license fee or 3 year whatever you end up purchasing at the time, or get stuck in a Cisco ELA, which I think is the death knell, right? I think that that's awesome. So, and I don't think that without going to the basically the rebranded Cisco as Meraki switchgear, I don't think you can even get to 25 gig, right? Not across they don't even have the competing products really.
No, and Unify is stepping up. And now what's interesting is once you get into the 100 gig game, especially with these ECS aggregation switches, you're talking about a very niche type of thing. This is not something anyone can produce. So my understanding, and this is one I'm diving into a lot, is on the back end they're running Sonic. Are you familiar with Sonic OS?
No, I've not heard.
It is an operating system run by many of the top of rack switches and data centers. So Sonic OS is very common in the data center at the hyperscaler level. And what this does is it allows I believe it's all open source. It's a very customized Linux kernel for managing the ASIC chips. So you can do high speed 100 gig switching and routing.
Okay.
So I think it's like a cousin of BIOS that I could be someone will call me out on that and that's fine. But I know it's somewhere related in there, but Sonic OS is matter of fact, the only people I have ever seen review it is our friend Patrick from Serve the Home, because it's such a data center type thing. But they're actually running Sonic OS inside these. They're putting the unified management layer, so they didn't try to reinvent how we manage at the chip level the chips that can handle that high speed routing, but they did interface with it so you can use the unified interface. But they're actually using some common common chips. They didn't have to reinvent all the chips, reinvent the control for those chips. So I think it's kind of neat that they're getting into it at that level, but also they realize a shortcoming. Like we don't, it's a lot of engineering to reinvent that. Why reinvent it? But Sonic OS, completely command line driven, just like BIOS. So instead of going full command line, which goes back to that higher skill set that you need, hey, why don't we put a management interface? We'll put that common unify interface. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, that's. I just wanted to see if this is what you're changing
Yep.
our orientation a little bit here. No, I want Tom back. Oh, there we go. Jeez. Okay, sorry guys. Okay, I've never even heard of Sonic OS, so that's fascinating.
Yeah, and it's a Linux Foundation project, as you noticed too. So
yeah.
Maybe you heard a couple of these companies. Google, Intel, Cisco uses it, by the way, because Cisco sells the hardware and it runs Sonic OS on the back end. Now you have a Cisco management layer in there as well.
Sure. Yeah, you're going to have some sort of translation layer, right, for all of their. Interesting.
And Sonic OS, what is it called? It's the Open Source Consortium, I think is what they have a name for it. It's kind of a fun thing that happened a number of years ago where all these companies, the hyperscalers, the Microsoft, Facebook, Google, etc., AWS, they realized the real gold isn't the servers, it's our data. They're like, hey, we monetize data. How about we collaborate and share how we actually manage the servers and how we actually build the servers and how we build the hardware for the fabric that connects them all. And why don't we collaborate on that so we can harvest people's data faster? We don't compete on that. We're competing on how much data we can harvest. We're not competing on who can build the better server. So they actually, that's why there's been a lot of community resources. They realize they can, by sharing knowledge, and this is when Google opened up some of their data center, how they build them, and revealed some of the details, and Facebook did as well. They started talking about how you have efficiency gains on the way they design things, and they open source a lot of this. A lot of people don't realize how much even companies, as much as you can properly and well-deserved hate on Facebook, they actually are pretty big on a lot of their open source contributions that they've done. I mean, their extension, they have a really unique interpreter. They actually write a lot of the stuff in PHP for Facebook, and then it gets interpreted on the back end. And it's like this really unique real-time compiling thing they do. I went to a talk on it. I was like, it went right over my head, but boy, that was cool. Yeah. But and they open source it all. So
yeah, I was just seeing that you can, looks like you can download the source code, and I'm not sure if this is I mean, clearly you'd probably want to be able to target some pieces of real hardware, like you said, with the ASICs in the back end. I
Yeah.
wonder how much of the community shares back any of their stuff, or if they just use that as a base layer, and then, like you said, they got their translation layers on top of it. That's what we see or what we interact with, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of it gets as data center people do. They're keyboard jockeys. They're on the command line. They're not
Yeah.
point and clicking their way through setting these things up. And Sonic, I think he does a lot of configuring, but most of the time, what I see, I have people that work in my company smart enough to do this. We did a whole Ansible deploy for some Arista switches. So, because that's what integrated in your network is that we just made the playbooks in Ansible so they could deploy their switching in a very defined way. It makes it kind of cool because when you do that, you define everything in an Ansible playbook. You can say, push this playbook, and it automatically configures the switch. So you can lose the switch config because you're pushing it via like a master config. It's kind of an interesting way to do it, but you just say, all right, switch defined. This is, third switch down in this rack. So it has a name. And then this port is this port's this, and you're defining it. So every time, if ever you have to replace a switch, you're going to swap it out. You just take that playbook and you run it against the one you're going to replace, and it always matches. So you don't even matter. It doesn't matter if you back up the configs anymore. You always are able to just push the configs. And if you have a VLAN defined, well, there's a whole section in the playbook that defines VLANs. We define it once, and now it pushes it everywhere. You can do this with MikroTik as well. So it's not, matter of fact, what's really cool about it, if you get really good with something like Ansible, you can do multiple models of different hardware. You can have a hodgepodge and make it work.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of like I am effectively moving to a Juniper stack in the day job, and Juniper's the same way, right? That you can target that and just fire off everything that they do is an XML. So, and you can just post it. It's just basically using HTTP and curl commands and just boop and send it off, and then you can copy pasta to your heart's content, and now you have a mass deployment without actually doing any real work, which is, I mean, that's what we should be, right? It's 2025. We should be not be looking at command lines going, INTGE001. Like, we should be doing that. No, we aspire to greatness. Let's move on from that stuff.
Well, and it's the same thing. When you get into using something like Terraform and defining things, it's because of some complicated reasons, but we even our DNS is all built with Terraform at my company, and how we manage it between all of our other companies.
Interesting.
We manage it for the clients like that. So we have a master Terraform config, but it allows us to lift and shift. So if we wanted to change to our DNS provider, as long as we choose a DNS provider that can be supported via Terraform, we can push all the configs for what we do via Terraform.
Yeah. Just target that new host or that new provider and fire it off, and then when it's ready, then flip your registrar, and you're done. Right?
Yeah, it's kind of a neat way to do it. Also, it's a great way to screw things up at scale for anyone that's wondering.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Want to propagate things at scale?
We've seen some pretty big. I mean, I like all of those, like speaking of like the hyperscalers and like Google and their propagation of bad BGP routes and that kind of stuff, right? Like you can really make a bunch of bad mistakes really easily and really quickly.
BGP lets you screw up at a whole nother level. Automated BGP, man. I mean, I love that. God, it's been probably 6 or 7 years since it happened. But when Facebook goofed up their BGP to the point where Facebook uses their own logins as their IDP or identity provider, including down to their door access. So they locked themselves out of their own buildings when they shut down their system. It was so amazing. It was like,
I think I heard that they had to break down doors to get inside, right? I mean, there's a guy out there with a fire axe knocking down a door to get in. Just so
they could revert back some of the routes on things. I mean, show me you have a bunch of young developers who don't know things ever go wrong.
And I too like to test in production myself.
Yeah.
So I don't want to belabor on the Unify stuff, but I did want to ask you in regards to pfSense, specifically, do you think that it's, and this is kind of a two-parter, but we've talked in the past about BSD and just how it's not getting the love or the support it needs to really thrive or maybe even survive, if I may be so bold. But I guess the question is, what do you think what do you think the long term play is for that when it comes to like OpenSense or pfSense or anything that's BSD based? That
It's a tough market. Netgate is still one of the big contributors, and Juniper, because of their support contracts that haven't expired. Because if I'm not mistaken, everything new in Juniper is on Linux, but some of their
yeah,
they have a lot of stuff that is still under support that's BSD. So they're still actively contributing. So
okay,
long tail of legacy. I mean, hell, we're still using COBOL in a lot more places than we should be. So BSD will live on. But in terms of like new hardware, that becomes very tough because
right,
it becomes a legacy support thing. It may fade away. I don't think BSD will go away, but I think it'll contract more compared to the growth we're seeing in other markets. So it's kind of a tough call. I hate to see it happen. I don't like the fact that we would go to a singular monolithic. We're all using Linux,
hmm,
but
right.
I don't have another real solution for that, so to speak. I don't see anything on the horizon where I would say, oh, don't worry, we're going to have this solved and we're going to have a more healthy ecosystem. It is kind of well, I guess we're all going to use Linux now because that's what's being developed.
Yeah, I came across and I guess one of the predicators of that question is I did a review just a little while back on this little purpose built firewall from iCool Core. It's got 10 gig NICs in it, and they're Marvell NICs. And the first thing I was going to do is just as a means of evaluating this thing, so I'm going to throw pfSense on this thing. I'm going to give it a go, right? And then we'll see how well it tosses packets and does its job. And Marvell doesn't make drivers for BSD, and they're not going to make drivers for BSD. That company's decided that's not their thing. They have Linux drivers that are already available. Download a Linux-based firewall or a Linux-based OS or Windows, and off you go. And it was really kind of this like it wasn't that I blamed the hardware manufacturer for choosing. I mean, they chose the fives that were probably the most financially appropriate for their
Yeah.
whatever cost they're going for. But it did kind of hit me. I'm like, it felt like we were seeing maybe a potentially widening gap between,
Yeah.
like you said, with legacy hardware versus new stuff. And if you can't guarantee that the stuff you're going to buy down the road is going to be supported, then that feels icky. It feels like it's not good for them.
Yeah, and that's exactly why the folks over at IX Systems decided to, they didn't want to abandon BSD. Chris
Right.
Moore is the founder of PCBSD, so he ran that project for a while. He's a true BSD person.
Yeah.
He
I
heads
bet he's a good
development
guy.
over for all the TrueNAS stuff. But Chris is like, I'm sorry. I mean, he can love it all he wants, but they kind of had to make the transition to TrueNAS scale, and it's just a reality they had to deal with. Going, there's not driver support for the network cards. I don't have the
Right.
time to write drivers for network cards. There's only so much TrueNAS can do, and they spend all their time developing the NAS side and open source storage. They don't have going, oh, let me hire a couple, $200K a year kernel developers.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
that's one of the things, like even with Netgate employs numerous kernel developers. And if you look up what a kernel developer gets paid, you're like, oh, that's challenging. And I'm like, yeah, there's not enough money to go around to develop it. There is a bunch of those people on the Linux side getting paid by the companies like Google or whoever, because they're all using a lot of this. So those people kind of are in the ecosystem doing their thing for Linux, but they can't, they're not exactly a binary drop in for doing the same thing again in BSD. So
Right.
here we are. And like, you're seeing that contraction.
Yeah. And I think that from the TrueNAS perspective, it's a no brainer to switch to Linux because then you unlock, like, I never really felt like, I mean, well, is there a Docker or container system for,
Oh,
is,
absolutely.
is,
This is one
is
of my
it
favorite
good?
stories. This is how it's
Because
so.
I know jails, and I'm like, jails are great, but that doesn't, no, that's not the
No, but
thing.
jails, depending on what, there's a couple different versions of jails, and
Okay.
my joke with FreeBSD is always the same, and anyone in the FreeBSD community knows this. BSD did it first, Linux did it better. So they had jails forever. They've
Yep.
had, I can't remember there's two different versions of them of the jails, but a lot of the jail system, although it works different and it didn't have the fancy Docker repositories, but the jails were a really solid way to take applications and segment things in kernel
Hmm.
space, the whole concept of the
Right.
containerization. So they were really first to market. I believe, I don't think this was even a full concept in there, but the Linux obviously did it better in ways because, Linux got in containerization, but then also Docker became a thing to make
Hmm.
service delivery. So they had all the tooling around, they had all the things to actually build it as an ecosystem, as opposed to going, here's a jail, do something else in it. which is not always giving you the tooling you want. But the BSD market kind of was there first on some of these things. But yeah,
and
didn't
then
last.
Google came in and gave us Kubernetes and was like, I hate everybody. And
Yeah.
so that's
Kubernetes is its own animal.
yeah. I'll be here all week. Try the fishing. So because it is a common conversation between the two of us, let's talk about hypervisors and virtualization.
Absolutely.
We have to. So I want to get an update from you on XCP&G, what you're thinking about the project, how are they doing? Because for a while, I was hot and heavy, just really paying close attention to to the blog and the updates. And I have since kind of switched gears just a little bit because things are kind of quiesced in life, right? So what are your thoughts? Where are they at? Are they growing? I mean, where is the production GUI? It's not out yet for.
Yeah, they're go slow and steady as developers do with no real promises. But what's been good for them is as a team, they've hired a lot more people. They're signing up on average right now 30 new resellers every month. They announced that just the other day.
That's awesome.
So a big part of what I was doing today was consulting with a very large company. Scalable, and we're hoping, because the company actually said we might be able to talk about the project when we're done with it. I said bonus, but the whole thing is moving over from VMware to XCP&G, and this is a very large enterprise with 2 data centers, and they're moving their data centers and are having a full DR plan. And they actually, after the proof of concepts that we were going through, they said this will fail over faster than our previous VMware one. They were impressed. They said this is really, they were almost dumbfounded that it works like this. What actually was shocking them the most is they didn't believe, and I did a demo for them, that you can do it with the open source version. They thought only the licensed version would do the failover. And they're buying all the licensed version. But when I showed them, they're like, wait, why does yours say no support? I said, I do all my demos with the open source version to show you can do it. They were like, the open source version will do that too? And I was like,
we don't have to pay for this?
Yeah, we didn't have to buy we'll buy a license. We're not backing out of that part, but we'll buy the support contract. But really, it was kind of a fun conversation. They had 6 people from their team that I was doing the demo for. So as I said, 6 IT people. Their network guy was on the call. Several other engineers were on there, and so we're seeing it put in some really big companies now. I would say they're going really, really well. I think Proxmox, anytime, and this was a group discussion I had in another whole group chat with a bunch of other MSPs. There are a few of them that went Proxmox route, but they said they're not doing anything more than 1 or 2 hosts at a time. So the one where I'm seeing XCP&G, and we've seen a few people we consult with that they're like, it's 1 host, Proxmox works for us. I get it, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. HomeLab loves Proxmox, and I got nothing, nothing against it. But for these larger companies, we're seeing more and more of them reach out to us at scale of doing it. So and the numbers on the back end from the team at Vates kind of confirms it. Yeah, we're selling. We're not really hitting the tiny market, but the big market loves us.
I think you alluded to it. These were a VMware customer.
These are. Yeah. It's all, and they were, big VMware customers. To give you an idea of the scale, we're putting the firewalls they have, and we're adding a few more, are Cisco, 3121s. The base price on those is $65K per firewall. And every one of them at each one of their 6 locations is HA pair. So
a lot of money invested in that infrastructure.
Yeah, the money's not a problem for this. They're just like, we're just buying. Yeah, we need more for this other project, and so they went everything is top of the line. They're in a very profitable position for what they do. So,
and in all fairness, probably moving to XCP&G and dropping VMware left them with a whole bunch more money than otherwise they would have spent too. So
yeah, they actually said this is not
pencils out.
Yeah, with what VMware was going to charge for all this, they're like, well, this is a reasonable. And by the way, this is all backed by TrueNAS. They've got the new Flash dual controller systems. Right. They went all Flash with the new stuff. I'm like, wow, this is just a fun project.
Yeah, those are good times when you've got a customer who's got deep pockets and they want the best, and you can be like, we're going to do the best.
Yeah, and they fully did. They said we won't lie. We're not. Don't rake us over the coals. We're not here to nickel and dime anyone. They're like, they right away bought the consulting hours. It wasn't an argument or a negotiation. How much is your consulting hours? Cool. We'll take this many of them right off the start. Oh, okay.
So, in the business side of things for you, are you seeing, or how much of, because I remember in the past you mentioning that you didn't have a bunch, but you definitely did have VMware customers. You
Hmm.
had, I think you even said you had at least one or two VMware engineers on staff, so to
Yep.
speak, like people
Oh
who,
yeah.
um, what are you seeing? Are you seeing everybody? I guess what I'm asking is, what I'm seeing out there is there was the big anger, let's call it that, I guess, and then people were planning on leaving, and probably about a third to a half stayed. They made some of them made like big sweeping changes to their deployments and infrastructure to get away from vSAN taxes and that kind of stuff, with the promise or idea that in 3 years we're going to go somewhere else. But what did you see? What have you seen?
Some people bit the bullet, and one of the reasons why is sometimes with their enterprise support contract with whatever their line of business application is, says we run on VMware. We'll only
Right,
support you if you do VMware. That way,
right.
any problems we have, we know isn't related to the hypervisor, which I think is kind of a cop out. I get
It is.
why you want to do it from a homogenized standpoint. You want all your customers using the same stack as much as possible so you can eliminate any things, but to the same extent, yeah, this is it's a way to force it. It almost makes me with those companies. I'm not too conspiracy person, but a little bit going, are they getting a kickback from Broadcom going, hey, tell them they have to use it or you won't support it?
I would believe it. Like, I can relate a scenario. One of the decisions that, that I was aware of is a company who was using Cisco UCS, their VoIP stuff, and Cisco only certifies either bare metal installs or VMware only.
Mhm.
And they were like, you know what? We're going to move to Teams calling. Screw you guys. We're not going to do this because we got to move off VMware, and we're not going to buy bare metal hardware just to run this. We need virtualization. So so I mean, I'm sure there's acceptance testing. I'm sure there's a bunch of process goes through, but I know that like Nutanix, for example, the rep that I had talked to recently said that in any given month, they're seeing hundreds of companies run acceptance testing of their software on Nutanix so that they can be like, yes, we support Nutanix. You can go that route now. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's just business, but yeah, virtualization is kind of virtualization, really.
It's really it's not rocket appliance anymore. I mean, this
Nope,
has become almost commoditized, and
it is.
uh yeah. So I think of it more of an like I said, I don't know if there's actually kickbacks going on, but there's a small part of me that suspects it. I bet these guys all golf together.
Oh yeah, sure. Round hole nine, they're like, so how's it going?
So how can we enshittify things more
Yeah,
and
let
enrich
me grease those
ourselves?
wheels. Yes.
I want to own this golf course.
um. So I guess we'll kind of change gears. I know you've been building, or is it completely built? Is your new home lab at home built?
Yeah, it's finished. I would I
And
would I did the tour of it. Well, it's never finished when you're building a
right,
home.
yeah,
Like,
that, yeah.
it's
You
reached
sure
a
about that?
state that I could say the wires are put where their wires will probably be for a while. So
Okay.
I did the tour. I'm now we worked on this today. We're building making it better, our lab in Toledo. So I'm in Detroit, and Toledo is about 45 minutes south. Toledo is the home base of the IT services company. So
Okay.
we were working today on putting that together. So that's coming along too. Well, it'll be a while before I do any type of tour of that because it's embarrassingly bad. It is
Well,
it is a hodgepodge. We have so much. Maybe I will do it because Wendell definitely let people tour his place. And did you watch Wendell's tour at all?
I didn't see it.
I
No.
will send you that video. Anyone wants to look it up? It's Gamers Nexus went and visited Wendell. It's on Gamer Nexus channel, and they wandered around the chaos that is Wendell from Level One Text. It's a thing of beauty because there's so much cool stuff there, but it is chaos. But they could just pick up. There's stuff stacked as high as you can see of electronics, and stuff hung from walls. And anything that Steve would grab, Wendell, what about this? Wendell will give you a history on it.
Yeah.
And it was great.
He's an awesome dude. Wendell's
He's
an awesome
awesome.
dude.
It was a fun watching because Wendell's esoteric and knows all these obscure things like that. And it's fun seeing him completely unscripted, so to speak, of, hey, Wendell, what about this? Oh, let me tell you the story of this. And it became kind of fun. This is great. great fun to watch. But it's maybe I'll show how ours looks because it's in the basement of a 120-year-old building. That's where our current lab is for our we have a really nice offices that we remodeled. We just never remodeled the basement. So we bought the building and it's kind of cool looking, but there's shelves and shelves. We got so much old stuff there. We got old, the company CNWR started as a company called Toledo ISP. And I swear some of the things from Toledo ISP are still there. We have like modem racks and things like that. So I actually joked to say, why don't we make it a computer museum? Because we got so much random old things. We even have a rack from the 80s. That's really cool. A beige server rack. Just no one wants to throw anything away there because we have like our basement is, I think, 6,000 square feet. So
wow,
yeah,
that's massive.
yeah.
You
so we have
turn your museum then. Just bring
so
them down.
no one told us to throw anything away, so we don't.
Yeah. Is there? I just out of curiosity, in a house that old, is there like some giant, like terrifying in the dark or poorly lit oil burning furnace that like growls at people when they look around in the corners? Like it feels like that's a horror movie.
Some of the horror movie stuff has been removed. They've over the years cut some of that out. The one thing that does scare me is the pit. There's because of the way the building is built and when the plumbing was put in, they use a pit and an ejector pump, and that thing is something about that irks me. What that means is anytime, and there's 3 floors, so anytime anyone flushes anything, it all goes down to the pit, and then there's these 2 big ejector pumps that lift it out of the pit and send it to the city sewer system, and it's just kind of this big thing in the middle of the basement.
I'm hoping there's a lid on top of it or something.
Oh yeah, trust me. Well, there was a leak and the lid was not airtight. We all knew it too.
Oh man,
we had to open it up because it was running. Something was wrong with it, and we had to have some people come out. But yeah, that thing's kind of creepy. There used to be this hole in the wall that is not there, but they put a board over it. The city did. The city had to service some of the steam pipes that go under the road. So there's a hole in our building that goes under the road, and you can get into the steam tunnels. So that kind of scared. They boarded it up, but it's kind of cool. We could take the screws back out and go back in there. That's crazy because that's like also over 100-something years old.
That sounds like a weekend adventure right there. Send people down with screwdrivers. Yeah, that's awesome.
Bearded IT Dad is going to be coming and visiting me in Detroit in a couple of weeks, and I'm taking him down there. He's like, I want to see your office. I was like, I'll take you to the office. You can hang out with the people. And you can go downstairs and see our weird basement. So
that's cool. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like now being on the West Coast, being like younger compared to say the East Coast in terms of just development. It always fascinates me. The same story about like the random toilets in the basements in like Pittsburgh.
Yep.
It feels like the same thing as you're just like, there's some weird reason we had to have this for the way things used to work. And now it's just like this urban thing. That's just like, you have a toilet in your basement, just sitting there on the stairs. Yeah. That's me.
Yeah. There's this, the Pittsburgh potty is a thing. If anyone wants to go look up Pittsburgh potty or Pittsburgh toilet, and you'll be like, what is a Pittsburgh toilet? And you'll learn. And we have those here in Detroit. So Pittsburgh's only a few hours away from us. Oh yeah. My friend has one in his basement. I think it's great. My wife says we have a new house, and she's like, you are not putting one of those in. I was like, we're just going to put one here. I don't want to build a bathroom around it.
So weird. Yeah. This is just here. We don't use it. It's there for, I'm not sure what they were there for. Something to do with like backing up or something. I don't know. But
well, no, the reason they were there is the history of the Pittsburgh potty. There's usually a sink next to them or something like that. But in the way we built the houses, a lot of the houses here have basements in Michigan. It's very common. Mm-hmm. And as the manufacturing was built up around here, and Pittsburgh as well, Pittsburgh is known for the steel industry, and Detroit's known for steel and, of course, automotive. You come home from the factory and you don't want to use the bathroom. And, of course, with a ton, especially in the areas around here, Wyandotte, for example, where you actually find a lot of these as an adjacent city to me, it's a very Catholic city, very Polish city. So you have large families, 9 kids in a smaller house, which means there's a rotation to the bathroom. So Dad would get home from work and he would go downstairs, and that's where they put the extra bathroom. They would chisel into the plumbing, put a bathroom down there. So when you come home all dirty, he would just go down and use the Pittsburgh potty down there and clean up before he came upstairs with the kids. So that's literally why. And then once one dad did it, all the dads at work, I got this toilet down in the basement. Really? How'd you do that? I just chiseled a hole and put a toilet there. Well, I'm going to do that one on this weekend. Want to come over and help me, Bob?
That's wild.
And somehow it became a thing.
Yeah, like an actual thing. Like it's common. It does not exist out here, but it
does not exist out there. But you also don't have as you go, so if you spend any time in, like, I've been to Salem and Boston and somewhere on the far East Coast, you there are neighborhoods built in the 1700s that are still standing over there. And we have a ton of houses here built in the 1800s. That's not uncommon to have houses that old. The house that was here prior to us tearing it down and building this, because the house was really falling apart that used to be on this property, it was built around 1920, and lasted all the way till 2019 when they tore it down.
That's a long run right there.
Yeah. But if you that the city adjacent, like I mentioned, Wyandotte, tons of really cool Victorian homes that are just very unique, very eclectic. I wanted one. I just didn't want the maintenance that comes with the house at all. But yeah, just kind of novel thing. And that's with the Beard IT Day. He goes, hey, he wants to see some of this. I was like, oh yeah, I could take you to these places, and they're like, even some of the bars are been open for 100 years, literally the same bar.
That's something that doesn't exist on this side of the U.S. There's just not the history, right? The density and the history. There's history here, don't get me wrong, but you don't have that, like,
it's a different history.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. So
yeah. And kind of bring this up right here. I see Drew C said the Serial Report guys would probably be interested in some of the old gear. Yeah. On the things I want to do is reach out to. I don't know if you ever on anyone to follow the Serial Report as a YouTube channel, and they really do a great job of reviewing. They take a piece of tech and they dive into the history. They even reach out and talk to the people who might have built the tech. They did the first load balancer. I watched that one, just came out, I think maybe just a couple weeks ago. But it was the first people who made a load balancer, because it was like cutting edge. You had to invent it. We had all these people trying to host websites, but no one had the right good concepts on how to move network data fast. This report will dive in, talk to the engineers that built something that might have been from the 90s or early 2000s. Is definitely really cool. I see Kevin Dukowitz is a friend of mine. VCF, Vintage Computer Festival, great fun event. VCF Midwest is the one I go to, which is the Vintage Computer Fest Midwest. Happens in Chicago every year. Very cool event to go see and meet all these people. Oh, and the Pix Firewall. Yeah, that was actually a great episode.
Yeah, I remember seeing that one too. And wow, that was awesome. That was
yeah. I mean, it's kind of like they invented NAT and a bunch of other things, and that whole process of how Cisco acquired it is an interesting piece of tech history.
Mm-hmm. So, what are you doing with your 740 XT? Like, do you have any, other than like working on content and evaluating and that kind of stuff, what are you running for HomeLab stuff these days, now that you've got a real bespoke HomeLab?
Yeah. So I did, obviously when you switch from Unify to PF Sensing, you were using HA proxy, you had to come up with some other solutions. So I had to move over to Nginx for the reverse proxy. But I for myself, I run a lot of light services. I run Fresh RSS because that's how I don't let algorithms drive how I consume content. So I use an RSS reader to gather what information sources I want, which include YouTube, which include any feeds I have for certain news sites that I want to keep up with in a chronological manner. Yeah, before the show, we talk a little bit. I do run MB. I don't watch a lot of it, but my wife does. So, it's kind of cool having a HomeLab server with so she can watch any of the shows she wants. Or my son has a bunch of random things he likes to watch that are on there as well. He's 18, so it's mostly like anime stuff. So yeah, the age gap and age and where he's at for that. Right. Other than that, I'm trying to think what else I have. I've been playing a lot more with Open Web UI and Olama. So self-hosted LLMs have been just a lot of fun lately. Home Assistant as well has been. I've always had a lot of Home Assistant integrations. That's my own obsession with it. Trying to think what else even runs on there. Graylog. So much of my time is actually spent labbing out ideas for clients. That's so I have so many servers. So many of the things are like, hey, will this work this way? So there's some Windows servers that my staff uses to put together an idea. I'm putting together some like reviews on how MC lag works in Unify. So once again, I built servers, I built the infrastructure, you build it all out, document all the instructions, and then do the failover testing. So a lot of it's more that than anything else. I'm kind of a boring computer user because I don't have like a million self-hosted things.
Well, you're doing it as like same as me. Like part of it is also to plan, learn for the day job, right? For your customers, stuff like that. And it's really easy to fall off the self-hosting side when you focus so much on the actual. I'm working on stuff that I want to make production or recommend to people. So I get that. Yeah, I am. What are you doing with the Olama stuff? Are you doing anything qualitative, or are you just kind of like just playing around with it?
Lots of fun. My wife was actually looking over my shoulder because she didn't know. I was like, "Hey, check out this thing I'm doing, the AI thing," and she watched us type. She goes, "You're going to be on a list," and so
You're like, no, I won't. This is self-hosted.
that's what I told her. She's like, "Okay, you can't ask it where to hide the body," and I was like, "But it'll tell you. You just use these unrestricted models," and um, it's been a lot of fun playing with it. I actually did a live stream with it because we're working on an idea and a concept with some friends that we're all on the same page that AI is not been what it was promised. And it's got some really cool things. It does some really neat stuff. But it was fun doing it on my live stream last Thursday because I had people asking me questions. Someone from Sweden says, "Hey, it's late here in Sweden." I said, I have no idea what time it is in Sweden. So we asked the Olama system and we asked I have a lot of different models and we were asking different models what the time zone. I said, "This is the time in Eastern Standard. What time is it in Sweden?" The first answer one of them gave was there's 3 time zones in Sweden. I'm like, I didn't know that. The
That's
person from
weird.
Sweden goes, "No, there's not." And so
How
we
big
turned
is
in,
Sweden?
yeah, I was like, "Yes, they have 3 time zones." And the person from Sweden's like, "No, they don't." And I was like, "Oh, that's weird." So I switched models and asked it, and there was 1 time zone in that model. Then I switched back to the model, and I'm copying and pasting the same question, the same pose. It answered it right the second time. And these are some of the problems that we have with these LMs is they don't just hallucinate, they confidently give you. It had an explainer why there was 3 time zones. It had justification for them. It explained how they
Quite
divide
the
them.
hallucination. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, let me just hallucinate the reason, not just the wrong answer, but why I'm giving you the wrong answer. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to do this coding live stream with some of my developer friends. He just wants me to referee, as I called it. He said host. I said, I'm going to be a referee. And so they're going to do some coding challenges real time with AI and show how it will sometimes get it right and sometimes get it wrong for what they want to build. So we're coming up with some build ideas. We're going to do it as a live stream. And the reason we do it is live, so it's not fake. We're all just going to use this stuff where no one's going to, because everyone tells you this amazing story. Look what AI built, this amazing game. It built this for me. It wrote the app. It did this magic. You should buy my service that auto writes this code for you. And then you actually buy it. You're like, this thing just told me the wrong, this isn't even escaping characters properly. It's like, so I think that'll be some kind of fun stuff that's coming out of it. And that's why I have this all set up inside as a self-hosted lab to be able to keep going through this. I also have some ideas I've been playing with for some switch ideas, and I want to show people how to pass a VLAN between 4 different switch models. And my reason for doing it is to show you that I'm going to show you 4 different switch models and 4 different ways to do it because every company has their own idea. Here's how Unify does it. Here's how MikroTik does it. Here's how Alta Labs, because they have one of those. And here's a Cisco switch too. And we're going to pass a VLAN across all of them. And you're going to say, why are they all different? Isn't 802.1x a standard? Yes. The transport's a standard. It's downhill after that of how they implement it.
Boy, oh boy. Yeah, that would be interesting, just because I think it would really shed light on the differences in, the end result, like you mentioned, it's the same. You're going to get your packet from point A to point B, but boy, oh boy, whether you're doing it via syntax or via like whatever GUI method, you're right. It is wildly different.
Yeah. Now, things I do really like, and I thought about doing a video on how to use or how to have ChatGPT help you in your home lab. I did a video on those multi-actuator, the dual actuator Mach 2 drives from Seagate.
Yep.
Now, Wendell did a video, and Wendell did a nice job of writing a script. Wendell's script doesn't scale, though. We learned there's some limitations if you have too many drives and you want to do a whole lot of VDEVs, like let's say you got about 60 drives, well, the script has a harder time with it. But if you take all the drives and you dump them in a list and hand that list as a CSV over to ChatGPT, you upload it, and you say, each one of these drives, because they'll have matching serial numbers, but I think it's the 5th or 6th octet will have a 0 or a 1 in it at the end of this string. You say, find this octet. No 2 drives with the same serial number. You have to tell, I'm building a ZFS array. No 2 drives with the same serial number may occupy a VDEV. I need 4 VDEVs or 5 VDEVs or 6 VDEVs to split these up. So you actually give it those instructions, and it will then create the ZFS create command with all the drives in separate VDEVs exactly as you need for the dual actuator drives. And, I thought I mentioned it in the video when someone messaged me and said, Tom, I've got a bunch of these drives. This is really hard to figure out. I'm trying to do it in a spreadsheet. I'm like, we just upload a spreadsheet to ChatGPT. And the weird thing is, it didn't do all the drives the first time we uploaded it. It only did 20 out of the 40 drives. So I said, because we were doing a 40 drive array at the time. And I said, there's 20 more drives. And then it fixed it the second time. It goes, oh, sorry about that. And then it fixed it the rest of the time. But it was cool because we double checked it. We were spot checking. Like, oh, yeah, all these VDEVs are spread across like they're supposed to be. Because the dual actuator drives, you would have a double failure. If you're doing Z2, one drive could take out.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So for resiliency, you would split them between there. And, it's an interesting thing, but that's something it's good at. It's really good at writing regular expression, because you stay inside of its context window. So if you're doing like parsing of a log, you did this for Graylog. I need to write some new parsers for Graylog. That's actually on my to-do list. But what I do is I take some of the logs, I drop a couple logs in there, and I say, write me a Graylog parser, because it's very familiar with Graylog, because it's ingested the entirety of the Graylog forums. And so you ask it that question, and it would actually build the grok patterns. And I say, cool, build this as a grok pattern I can import in Graylog. And it exports as JSON that you can just go to Graylog and say import, and it just boom, it's now got a parser that puts all the fields right where they belong.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with some of the stuff that I've done too. I actually, this gets me going on a thought that I had. This might be one of those like shower thoughts, so forgive me for this, but it did kind of hit me that when I was a kid, if you used a tool to come up with a solution for something, you'd be considered a cheater. That was cheating to do that. You should do it by you should know how to do it, learn how to do it, and do it by hand. And I find it fascinating how it almost feels like night and day, especially in business, like the business that I work for and others, where it's like, this isn't cheating. This is a shortcut. And this is like, okay, I mean, it's an entire paradigm shift on how they how people approach it. And, I've done similar things with when Google decided they were going to move to Manifest v3 and kind of break my ad blocking stuff. I was like, I wonder how hard it is to ask ChatGPT to build me an extension. So I told it what I wanted. I need to be Manifest v3, and these are the things that I want to do. And it blew me away. It gave me an entire manifest with images generated, everything to just import it. And I was just blown away. And it worked. And I was just like, holy shit, that's terrifying. But yeah, so I'm with you. That's when it does work, when it's not hallucinating, it's pretty, it's magical. It's kind of terrifyingly magical.
Yep. I suggest people look this up. This is a great video. It's called "When I Grow Up, I Want to Be a Script Kiddie" by John Hammond.
I have not.
Here, I threw the actual title of the video in there so you can find it. I threw it in the chat here because I know it won't let me post a link to it. But John Hammond, obviously pretty well-known cybersecurity guy, for million subscribers, and does some reverse engineering, does it for Huntress Labs, so it's his actual job doing this. He's not a poser, a fake person, or any way. But his talk, I was at his talk. It was so fun too. I'm in the audience on that talk. It's from Wild West Hacking Fest, and it's really a question of, am I a script kiddie because I'm doing this? And he breaks it down and keeps going in bigger and bigger tools he keeps using. He goes, am I a script kiddie because I'm gonna do it all from here? So am I a script kiddie if I do it from here? Well, I didn't write it in assembly. All right. So what if I use this tool that actually helps me with the proof of concept of this? Am I a script kiddie because I'm using someone's GitHub proof of concept? I didn't write the proof of concept myself. Okay, let's go further. What if I'm using Metasploit framework? Am I script kiddie because I'm using Metasploit framework? Okay, let's go bigger. What am I? And he keeps going through with this whole scenario of in the end, I'm just using tools. And yeah, and that's a lot of it. He goes, why wouldn't I use a tool to make it faster? Why, unless you're someone who's writing in binary ones and zeros because you refuse to use any tool, everyone at some level is a script kiddie is kind of the theme. But it's a fun talk, and it's thought-provoking. It's not overly technical either. It's actually very much about how he uses tools to get the job done, and why wouldn't you use a tool if a tool exists to make this more efficient?
Yeah, he's got a great point. I completely agree. There's no difference in the end, ultimately, if the objective is to succeed at your task, then yeah, right. But Tom, it has been It's been about an hour, and I want to be respectful of your time because
Okay.
I feel like you and I could sit here and talk all night.
Oh, we
And
can
I try
keep
to keep
going
these,
forever.
yeah, and I try to keep these to an hour long. So, will you come back sometime?
Absolutely.
Because I preface this by saying that a conversation you and I had, you probably don't even remember. It was like a year ago. You're like, you should do this thing. And I'm like,
I remember. Yeah.
yeah. And so I appreciate the nudge, the kick in the pants, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I think we'll call it, and we'll do it again sometime soon. Thank you so much for being on. And
I'm
I
all
hope
for it.
everybody
Just let me know. Hit me up. And as long as I'm available, I'm good.
absolutely. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Tom, have a wonderful evening, and we'll catch you guys later.
All right.
Where's my mouse at? My mouse is over here, Tom. It's on
Somewhere. I see. Tom's just warming up. They've seen me go when I'm wound up for like 3 hours.
Yeah.